This video is sponsored by PlayTracker. What? Ludo, I don't know why you're looking at me. I have no clue where we are. See, sorry guys, we're just a tad bit lost, but I'm happy to be lost here because we're inside Symphony of the Night, mate. A fantastic game laying the combined foundations for an entire subgenre, but this being my first time playing, I was kind of shocked by how different it was to modern iterations in terms of overall design flow, progression, and especially difficulty. So just like with all of the PS1 era games we've recently been exploring on the show, Symphony of the Night shows its age in certain aspects, and Yasi has an entire semi-ramblomatic episode on this very topic, so I won't dwell on it too much, but what I will dwell on, like Gollum resenting his filthy hobbits is how amazing Symphony of the Night's sprite work is. Now, as previously discussed, the PS1 was a whole new frontier for 3D graphics. The entire system was built for it after all, but it's been refreshing to see a team use 2D pixel art to its fullest extent, but then use the capabilities of the PS1 to blend 3D and pixel art together, utilizing the third dimension as a tool rather than an outright replacement, which is what kind of killed a lot of franchises back then. Now, we've spoken about 3D PS1 techniques at length in our previous episodes on Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII, but diving into pixel art here has been a real treat for me because pixel art and sprite work for me is still something that just seems like magic. What's a sprite? Well, in their most basic form, sprites are a selection of coloured pixels arranged in a way to form images of anything you want: a wall, a door, or for a more complex example, a person. To animate the son of Dracula Alucard, sprites are drawn and then arranged onto singular large sheets, a sprite sheet if you will. The game will then call a specific region of the sheet to be rendered on a specific frame after a player's input. Jumping, for example, it will then sequentially call all frames needed from this sheet to animate Alucard cycling through this jump animation, and this extends into any and all things Alucard could do. But alternatively, these sprites could also be split up into specific limbs to enable for more complex animations, like with the wolf form sheet and its complex run cycle. But this isn't just for characters. All assets, from weapons all the way up to the very rooms themselves, are built up from these individual sprites, and just like the game calls from sections of a sheet to give the illusion of movement for its characters, the way in which the world is loaded is also sequential, which means that depending on the order in which these environment sprites are loaded, by placing them on top of one another, developers can create the illusion of depth in what could have been pretty flat scenes. This being used masterfully across Symphony of the Night's many environments, and it is super impressive to see the sheer amount of art in this game, with 14 distinct areas and over 140 enemies with their own unique animations. That is a lot of art, but even compiling these sprites onto sheets makes them more efficient to store on the disk and then call during gameplay. These files are actually larger compared to the average 3D asset due to the color range, depth, and transparency they use. So big in fact that when you enter a new area via these compact disc hallways, it doesn't stand for Count Dracula. Why would they put a disc symbol above it then? Checkmate Dracula, you prick. Anyway, when you enter here, the music will dramatically cut out, and this is done to temporarily remove the music from memory, specifically to give more room to load the plethora of data required for the next area. So to store and be able to load all of these, they had to get clever with reusing assets, and once you see this, you won't be able to unsee it. For example, to reuse the teleport room asset but still have them be identifiable on site, they don't use unique art for each one, but instead change just these emblems on the inside, so they only need to be stored alongside the room on a singular sheet. Or, using the same brick sprites by altering their brightness, they can give the illusion of custom room lighting. Animations are the same, being reused constantly. For instance, Alucard will flinch equally whether he's tickled by a light breeze or turbo slapped by a vampiric nuke, because they're all taken from the same section of the sprite sheet, since there's no room for varied animations. The same goes for items and weapons. Each weapon has its own unique sprite on different sheets, which are then loaded into memory when equipped in the menus, which is then spawned in front of Alucard when he attacks, rather than being stored on his sheet specifically because there's no room. This is also the reason why equipable gear is not reflected on Alucard's character sprite. They'd have to completely redraw the entire sheet to put him in sunglasses, and then do that for every single item and combination, bloating the storage to kingdom come. Then why does his cape change colour and also with bat form? Well, the bat form has so few animations that there's actually room on its sprite sheet to include colour variations, but where the fuck are you going to store that on Alucard's sheet? So instead, his cape colour is changed dynamically at runtime via RGB colour sliders, which they actually repurpose to be adjustable by the player via the Joseph's cloak. All of this sprite work is super impressive, but as previously discussed, the PS1 is primarily built for 3D rendering. So how does Symphony of the Night utilize 3D graphics to its advantage? Well, technically, it's all 3D. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll explain in a second, but before we get into that, let's hear a word from our wonderful sponsor, PlayTracker.
This video is brought to you by PlayTracker, the app that tracks your cross-platform game library, achievements, stats, friend activity, and more. Lately I've been pondering some of life's most difficult questions. Am I the person I want to be? What happens to our consciousness after we die? Do spiders have lungs? Just how much of my existence has been spent replaying From Software games? Luckily, PlayTracker is here to help us answer at least one of those questions, earn some free games, and potentially win $250. Step 1. Join Second Wind's PlayTracker Guild at the link below. Step 2. Play games recommended by the Second Wind staff to earn points. Step 3. Use those points to redeem a free game. Step 4. Profit. Like spiritually and monetarily. At the end of August, the person who has earned the most points will receive a $250 gift card to the game platform of their choice. Unite your gaming multiverse and be rewarded for it with PlayTracker today.
Yeah, well, before you blow your top, mate, let me explain. The PS1 itself had no specific dedicated hardware or software for 2D graphics, so to render sprites, it had to place them on flat quads, sometimes referred to as planes, which by all definitions is just a flat square with a texture rendered onto it. But it's technically a 3D object, which lets them do a lot of cool shit. One of those said cool things was they could have a lot of shit on screen. Just look at some of these bosses. Where most large 3D environmental models on the PS1 had a rough polygon cap of around 500, these sprites are each a singular polygon, or yet technically 2 tries if you want to get technical about it, which means they could absolutely litter the screen with them, with little to no impact on performance. But the coolest thing of all in regards to these sprites being rendered on quads was it allowed the developers to scale and tilt them, which sounds kind of pathetic that I'm getting really excited about the fact that they can tilt them, but hear me out. By tilting and stacking these planes with sequential rendering, they could create the illusion of full 3D objects. What? No, it does make sense, because what is a 3D cube but a series of squares rotated in a certain way to give the illusion of a third dimension? What even is a D, mate? Don't think about it too hard. But getting back to it, the developers could use these angled sprites to their advantage to construct and animate objects that would be time-consuming to create in pixel art and also storage-heavy to have located on a sprite sheet. This can be seen in the save coffin and some of the select bosses, but my favourite and simplest example of this in motion is with these bookcases. This same bookcase sprite is being used here 4 times, twice here and then rotated twice more to add depth to the room. Then a unique edge piece is used to cap off the side of this bookcase, which allows them to rotate all of these sprites uniformly to create a full 3D bookcase and a hidden passage. Simple but amazing work. And this combination of 2D sprite work and 3D illusions is used to amazing effect across the entirety of the castle. I cannot fault the art in this game, but I wish I could say the same for its level design. Now, I know a bunch of you are probably reeling at the implication that one of the most highly praised Metroidvanias of all time doesn't have a perfect layout, but hear me out. As previously discussed, the map itself is broken into distinct themed chunks by these compact disc transition screens. Then, as the player slowly explores, they reveal tiled sections of the map, giving them information about where they've been, the location of key save and teleport rooms, and most importantly, where they haven't been yet, so they have new avenues to pursue. This map can do so much heavy lifting for a player who's struggling to figure out where to go next, but it's typically a last resort because mostly the game does an amazing job of using clearly signified ability blockades, making specific sections unreachable until the player acquires a key skill and leading them to pursue accessible paths instead. guiding them effortlessly from area to area, with the map clearly signifying unexplored sections via black squares or these branches to return to once the player has acquired a specific ability. Even teleport rooms are precisely placed to allow players to quickly traverse back to previously inaccessible areas. This, all in combination, leads to effortless ping-ponging between areas, all driven by natural level design guidance and its map slowly unraveling. This only really becomes a problem once all avenues for exploration are spent and the game relies exclusively on secrets for progression. There was this moment where I was playing personally where I thought I had done everything I possibly could with the abilities I had, and the actual path of progression was not signified on the map itself, but was located in the clock room via a unique waiting mechanic. You have to do this to get into the Colosseum to acquire the Mist form, which in turn is needed to go and get the Bat form from the library. Now, in some cases where there are large leaps in logic for progress, the game will subtly hint towards them, like leaving the library card in the room outside the boss arena in the Colosseum. But in the Clock Tower's case, who the fuck is gonna figure this out? Who honestly discovered the Clock Tower secret room intentionally and not by accident? Or who found the snorkel in the underground caverns that can only be reached by destroying the floor at the player's feet with weapons that cannot attack directly downwards? Now, I do understand that secrets are such an important part of the Metroidvania formula, but most of Symphony of the Night's secrets are heavily signified on the map via breakpoints. For one, spoiling most of their cool reveals, but also showing the player that there's something they haven't done yet. This is incredibly important for backtracking navigation, but this left side clock room path of progression does not have a breakpoint signifier. This long central path does though, which consequently leads to a completely different secret, but isn't even accessible until the player gets Bat form anyway, which they can't get until they find the secret entrance beside it. So most players are going to write this room off and this central path as a potential path of progression until they acquire a vertical traversal ability somewhere else in the castle, whereas in reality this is exactly where they need to be. This issue could be fixed by increasing the size of this room to allow for a breakpoint signifier to be shown for this left path earlier to entice player exploration here, or by showing a tiny bit of restraint and not packing this room full of 4 different secrets inside of a singular tile set. But in reality, I'm kind of glad they did pack this room because it does lead to one of the game's biggest and most impressive secrets of all, the inverted castle. So when you complete the game, if you did a string of ring-based shenanigans, which are ironically better signified in the game than the Colosseum clock entrance itself, you can reveal a secret ending that will eventually lead to the entire castle being inverted and filled with new challenges, enemies, and items. This is fucking insane and an unbelievable amount of extra work, and I was so excited to dissect how they designed a castle to be explorable in both formats, because the upright castle is pixel perfectly designed for satisfying movement via Alucard's base and double jump heights. So how did this work upside down too? Well, it doesn't. There doesn't seem to be any extra attention paid to making platforming specifically work in both states. They instead heavily rely on the player's ability to turn into a bat or mist forms to easily fly through rooms that would be impossible to navigate otherwise. And honestly, I think this serves the twist better and gives players added excitement for acquiring new abilities for these forms, because instead of designing a completely new map for the second half of the game, reusing the castle but inverting it allowed the developers to put their time into other aspects to bolster these reused areas, creating completely new diverse set of enemies and bosses for each area. And yes, a lot of these assets were reused from Rondo of Blood, but you've got to do this if you want this kind of scale and experimentation, allowing them to invest more time in creating new item drops and abilities that can be found in these same secret crevices as before, which is just a genius move. The player has spent so much time combing through this map to find all of its secrets, and its inverted castle is a way to further reward the player's knowledge and test it, but in reverse, which is much harder than you think. Playing a mirror course in Mario Kart for the first time is like getting mentally flashbanged. But in no other game have I seen the brass balls to offer the player a second playthrough with its own set of challenges, new characters, and secrets immediately after they finish. It's unbelievably memorable, and that's partly due to how easy it is to tackle. It's like a victory lap. Because this game is like a catharsis factory. If you thoroughly explore the castle, delve into its secrets and pay attention to item descriptions, it is incredibly easy to become extremely overpowered at the beginning of the inverted castle. The second half of the game is focused on allowing players to test the extent of their acquired power and effortlessly re-explore the castle rather than manufacturing a consistent difficulty curve, unlike previous Castlevania games which were focused on punishing difficulty over anything else. Fuck you, Medusa heads in particular. And I think Symphony of the Night's focus on satisfaction first creates a more memorable experience in the long run, like the fierce deity mask from Majora's Mask but stretched out across the entire second half of the game. They set up the playing field at the beginning of the game by introducing the player to the extent of Alucard's power before it is violently taken away from them by death, showing the ceiling and floor of obtainable power to the player for them to work towards and then eventually surpass as they struggle through the castle. And just like the fierce deity mask gives the player power as a reward for finding all of the game's optional masks, the obscene power levels seen in Symphony of the Night are only obtainable by finding secrets and then exploring them via knowledge. The weapons you obtain by themselves are never busted in their own default states, but if you know how to exploit them, they become unimaginably powerful. But this never felt bad, because the second half of the game is all about creating pockets of satisfaction to keep the player going rather than a stable difficulty curve. For example, it's no coincidence that before and after acquiring the Fart Cloud upgrade, there are large congregations of one-tappable bat swarms for you to struggle against as you enter and then destroy on your way out. In order to feel that satisfaction, the player first needs to struggle. This is what the upright and inverted castles are both facilitating, conditioning and then breaking the playstate to manufacture catharsis. And all of this combined creates one of the most satisfying games I think I have ever played, and I honestly can't get enough of it. I started a second playthrough, for God's sakes, before I'd even finished the first one. But with all of this, what do you think? Did you get stuck via the clock room waiting secret, and do you believe that the inverted castle is a worthy second half to the game, or would you prefer that it was harder? Let us know down below, because we would love to discuss this with you. And if you would like to vote on the next Jay's Never Played It Before Design Delve stream and episode combo, come by my personal Twitch stream tomorrow, the 18th of August at 7 PM EST, to have your voice heard. I hope to see you there. Alright, it's time to say goodbye, Ludo. Alright, bye guys.